Greetings. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pan-African Women's Day, our annual commemoration of African women, marginalized genders, and femme-presenting Africans who have made a huge difference and are making a huge difference in the struggle for African people to get control of their land back. Yes, we are here today because we want to help everyone understand that for African people to get their land back everywhere, that means we are no longer suffering at the hands of dehumanization or oppression. My name is Shukura Ayoluwa Umi, and I am very humble today to offer myself in today's program. I am a work study member with the Nzinga circle within this fine organization, and I am excited to welcome you. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this beautiful webinar that is hosted by the All African People's Revolutionary Party and the All African Women's Revolutionary Union. Pan-African Women's Day is one of the All African People's Revolutionary Party's annual holiday institutions, and we love to celebrate. We love to bring awareness and more of a background to this institution. So if this is your first time joining us, then you not only have more information about our organization, but you also have a better understanding of what our aims and intentions are, as well as why we are asking you to join some organization that is working for justice while you enjoy today's marvelous occasion. We will start by acknowledging that the All African People's Revolutionary Party is a Pan-African organization that is centered out of Africa. We have multiple chapters across the continent as well as in the diaspora. And the main objective of this organization is Pan-Africanism, which we define as one unified socialist Africa. In other words, this organization understands that many of the issues African people are facing around the world are a direct result of a cause and effect. And so, if we think more about that, we understand the cause: colonialism, capitalism, imperialism, patriarchy, abuse, and control of power. And then if we understand, if we're able to get control of our land back, African people would have so much more say, effect, and how the resources that we produce on African soil, gold, diamonds, coltan, cobalt, cacao, and rubber, to name a few, are sold, which would affect the respect that we are deserving of. This would change how people interact with us. It would change the type of treatment that we get because everyone knows that when you have ownership of your land as a people, you have power, and the same is true when a group of people are without owning their land. So, because today's webinar is brought to you by an organization that is working for justice, we encourage you all, and we will continue to encourage you all to join some organization that is working for justice. We are not insistent that you join our organization. We just want you to join some organization that is working for justice, because we expect to have as many people organizing alongside the All African People's Revolutionary Party, the All African People's Revolutionary Union, and together with the collectivist mindset, all of these organizations are going to become too powerful for the oppressor. And the oppressor will have no choice but to give any colonized person access to their land back. We will be too powerful for them, but we must organize ourselves first and then collectively come together so that we can get our land back, as we can help colonized people get their land back. And we understand that the intention of taking down any oppressor that is standing in the way is because they have control of the colonized people's land. As we get ready for Pan African Women's Day, we are fortunate and lucky to have you all joining us through this webinar today. We should acknowledge and be aware that African women, femme presenting, and marginalized ancestors of African descent fought and sacrificed so that we could be here today. We are lucky that they sacrificed for us and worked to change the conditions because they wanted to impact the world beyond themselves so that we all could live in a better world, and we owe them. The theme for today is gender-based oppression and environmental justice. Those two entities are linked due to those who are in positions of power, usually Europeans and European males, and have developed an ego from lineages of colonization, and they are accustomed to being in control because they have been known to be in control. And this is also where they get their power from, deciding how our resources are sold, used, and exploited, stealing land and determining how the resources are grown and stolen from the same land that is stolen. They are accustomed to managing their power, and therefore they control over all of our resources, the land we descend from, the people who were born and come from that land, how people navigate this world, how we make decisions, how we are impacted socially, politically, and economically. All of these entities are based on power and control. And the bottom line is non-male marginalized genders are not valued or respected no more than land, crops, resources, the damages of natural disasters, or the environments are. People that walk on this earth are insignificant because nothing matters more than capitalism, making sure to maintain profit with private corporations. So poor people don't matter, Marginalized genders, women, femme-presenting people don't matter. Colonized people don't matter. Differently abled people don't matter. And LGBTQ plus people don't matter. Not under capitalism. The point we are trying to make today is that when we think about all the hardships that are taking place in the world, from the acid rain to the extreme heat and extreme weather months, extreme winter months, when we think about what's going on with African unhoused people and how they are having the highest rates of being unhoused, and non-male Africans have even higher rates of being unhoused compared to African males, we think about how they have no shelter to seek when the increasing natural disasters are taking place. Wildfires, hurricanes, tornadoes, to name a few. We think about the water crises that are taking place, not only in Michigan, USA, but also Azania, Mexico, and India. Furthermore, we also understand and think about how people are suffering on the continent right now from respiratory health diseases because of being forced to mine for diamonds, developing the black lung illness as it relates to Israel and imperialism. All of this is a relationship between why we need to smash patriarchy, sexism, other systems of oppression, because they are all connected by Europeans and European males having control of power. If we have control resources, which equals power, then we said before controlling those resources means we can decide how those resources are used. And most important, that means we can determine how to better treat people without a classist standpoint, because we know that that based of treating someone based on their value is simply not decent or humane. We welcome you to Pan African Women's Day. We want you to get comfortable and make sure you have something to eat, something to drink, plenty of snacks. We want to make sure that you are in for an amazing experience. Text your friends, call them, post on social media. Do everything you can to spread the word, and we will continue to be with you for this amazing experience. As I said, my name is Shukura Umi. I am humbled to be with you today, and I am going to pass it to our beautiful comrade, Bernice, who is going to speak to us about the history of the A-AWRU. Stay tuned. Thank you, comrade Bernice.
Hello, everybody. I'm Venice Ejare and a proud member of the A-AWRU. So today I'll be taking you through a brief history about the A-AWRU. I'll be talking about what is A-AWRU, the role of A-AWRU in A-APRP, and the people oppression of women. A-AWRU simply means All African Women Revolutionary Union, and it was formed in 1980, 27th of November, in Ohio, USA, which is the women's wing of the A-APRP. It was formed to serve as a medium for promoting organization and political education around the problems faced by African women, and to also combat the triple oppression of African women. The role played by A-AWRU in A-APRP is to increase recruitment and retention of African women into the struggle to build the A-APRP towards the establishment of Pan-Africanism. It also creates a stronger bond between African men and women through political education concerning the present and past realities of African women, and the role of African revolution. It also ensures that African women jointly struggle with African men towards the establishment of Pan-Africanism and against all forms of exploitation and oppression, which includes racism, capitalism, and sexism. It also develops African sisters into conscious, effective, and revolutionary Nkrumah's cadre who also participates in the development of the A-APRP. The triple oppression of African women are class oppression, racial oppression, and gender oppression. With the class oppression, African women and men do not have a positive relationship with the mode of production. Mostly African women find themselves in the lowest part of the society. So under the racial oppression, African men and women are oppressed based on their cultural and historical reality. Racial oppression is a byproduct of capitalism and attempts to divide individuals based on their race and ethnicity. Finally, the gender oppression. African women are mostly oppressed because of their gender, since society elevates men above the women. So gender oppression is played out mainly in our communities, families, and society. So if you would like to join us, join the A-APRP, look for an A-APRP chapter in your area. If there's none, you can also work towards to establish an A-APRP chapter in your area. So you can contact the A-APRP at
All right. Welcome back to Pan African Women's Day. So, we are going to hear from our comrade Fatu in just a moment, but we just wanted to remind folks that we are encouraging you, if you are African, to join our organization. You can check out our website at https:// AAPRP-intl.org. That's what the comrade was just about to say. So I will pass it to Comrade Fatu. Greetings, comrade.
Merci, camarade. Waouh, exceptionnel. La camarade Bernice a donné un aperçu détaillé de l'histoire des efforts collectifs du PRTPA et de l'URTFA pour poursuivre l'établissement du panafricanisme et l'éradication de l'oppression contre les femmes. Je m'appelle Fatou Balora, je suis membre du cercle d'études Samora Machel, Centre Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso. Je m'appuierai sur le résumé de Bernice en partageant des informations générales plus détaillées sur l'importance de l'union des femmes et du PRTPA. L'URTFA et le PRTPA sont imprégnés de l'héritage de nos ancêtres qui ont porté la lutte panafricaniste, la lutte pour le panafricanisme. Excusez-moi. Bernice a mentionné que grâce à leurs études, les sœurs deviennent nkrumhistes, soulignant les contributions incomparables du premier président du Ghana, le Dr Kwame Nkrumah. Nous reconnaissons également d'autres ancêtres décédés, notamment Kwame Touré, la première coordonnatrice syndicale de l'URTFA, Mawina Koyate. tâche a véritablement façonné le véhicule de notre libération. À ce jour, l'Union panafricaine des femmes existe depuis 44 ans. Dès sa création, l'Union a réalisé ses principaux objectifs à pleine capacité, à savoir travailler pour recruter et retenir davantage de femmes africaines et les intégrer dans la lutte pour construire le PRTPA vers l'unité africaine, forger un lien plus fort entre les femmes et les hommes africains à travers l'éducation politique et les débats idéologiques sur la condition des femmes africaines et leur rôle dans la révolution en Afrique, tout en travaillant ensemble pour combattre toutes les formes d'exploitation et d'oppression dans la construction du socialisme scientifique. Établir des liens par le biais d'alliances partisanes avec d'autres femmes d'organisations révolutionnaires qui mènent une lutte nationale et de classe d'importance capitale. Au fil des années, l'UTFA a apporté une contribution significative à la lutte, à savoir défendre et soutenir la Million Man March, aider à organiser la nation de l'islam et prendre la parole sur scène à Washington, D.C. avec d'autres dirigeants mondiaux. Diriger la campagne contre l'interdiction américaine de voyager en Libye, en Afrique du Nord, en organisant et en dirigeant plusieurs délégations en Libye entre le milieu et la fin des années 1980. Diriger des délégations à Cuba, au Venezuela, en Tanzanie, en Afrique du Sud, en Guinée et au Ghana. Créer de nouveaux chapitres du PRTPA en Afrique de l'Ouest, en Tanzanie, en Afrique du Sud, au Canada et dans les Caraïbes. Et en travaillant avec des alliances internationales et des organisations frères et sœurs telles que l'American Indian Movement, le Pan-Africanism Congress of Azania, l'African National Congress, le PAIC-ZAC de Guinée-Bissau, pour n'en nommer que quelques-uns. L'Union révolutionnaire des femmes africaines, l'UTFA, est née de la lutte politique et idéologique pour la libération de tous les Africains et de tous les peuples autochtones pendant des centaines d'années de colonialisme, de néocolonialisme et d'impérialisme dans des pays où les femmes africaines ont toujours joué un rôle critique et décisif. Nous reconnaissons que ce n'est qu'à travers la pleine participation des femmes africaines à la lutte pour l'unité et la libération de l'Afrique que nous pouvons imaginer reconstruire l'Afrique en une société complète où les femmes, les hommes, les jeunes, les personnes âgées, les gens marginalisés et tous entrent expérimenter la douceur de la liberté et l'épanouissement du panafricanisme. Gloire à l'UETFA, les femmes ont leur place dans la lutte. Merci.
All right, folks. Well done, Comrade Fatu. I couldn't have said it better myself. When we think about the role of the struggle for African people, it cannot be left out that we must first address patriarchy, sexism, as those have an impeding barrier to African people achieving freedom all over the world. Next, we are going to hear from Comrade Rama. Thank you so much, Comrade. You have the floor. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Fatu. Welcome, comrades. And today we have the honor of hearing a group of exceptional individuals, starting with Renee. Renee is a passionate and radical ecofeminist activist and a climate change and social justice advocate. For several years, she's worked at the national and sub-regional levels in community-based projects aimed at strengthening the resilience of rural communities, particularly women to climate change. She has coordinated several national and sub-regional campaigns in West Africa and internationally. She is leading the Debt and Reparations Program at the Women African Alliance and is focusing on the coordination of community women-led campaigns on reparations, targeting the African Development Bank. Welcome, Comrade Renee, and you may begin your 10 minutes. Thank you.
Bonsoir ou bonjour à tout le monde en fonction de vos différentes positions géographiques. Je suis Reine Baïmé, je travaille pour Women African Alliance, qui est une organisation écoféministe qui est basée en Afrique du Sud. Alors, peut-être avant tout propos, hein, je voudrais déjà remercier le Parti révolutionnaire de tous les peuples africains et l'Union révolutionnaire de toutes les femmes africaines de nous avoir invités à ce panel. C'est un honneur. Et Women est une organisation écoféministe, comme j'ai dit, dont l'objectif principal est de promouvoir une alternative au modèle de développement dominant et destructeur, euh, qui est, pour ce faire, nous nous tenons aux côtés des femmes africaines et de leurs communautés, euh, que ce soit des groupes de femmes paysannes ou des communautés impactées par des industries extractives pour rendre visible et exposer les impacts du mauvais modèle de développement dominant sur le corps, le travail, sur le corps et le travail des femmes et aussi sur la nature. Nous travaillons en alliance avec d'autres groupes qui partagent les mêmes idéaux pour avancer une Afrique post-extractiviste écologiquement juste, centré sur les alternatives des femmes au modèle de développement extractif dominant et destructeur. Et pour ce faire, nous nous tenons donc aux côtés des femmes et des communautés donc impactées par les industries extractives pour les aider à s'organiser, mais aussi pour construire des mouvements et de solidarité afin de défier l'ordre dominant et de permettre aux femmes africaines d'avoir un accès sécurisé surtout aux ressources naturelles desquelles elles et leurs familles disposent pour garantir une meilleure qualité de vie. Alors, ceci dit, je vais très rapidement, en tout cas dans le temps qui m'a été donné, essayer de vous parler du travail que Women fait, parce que quand on parle d'oppression des femmes, c'est s'attaquer au cœur même de notre travail. Et dans un premier temps, je vais peut-être essayer de parler de comment l'extractivisme renforce l'oppression des femmes africaines en abordant des cas pratiques sur lesquels nous travaillons au Congo-Kinshasa, au Burkina Faso et au Mali. Ensuite, je vais essayer de parler de comment le système financier mondial joue un rôle et amplifie l'oppression des femmes. Et je vais peut-être prendre un peu de temps pour parler de la campagne sur les réparations qui cible la Banque africaine de développement que je coordonne. Et enfin, je vais essayer d'articuler autour de la justice climatique et comment il est un outil qui permet aux femmes de reconquérir leur vie et leur dignité. Euh, on sait que les ressources naturelles de l'Afrique sont l'une des denrées les plus recherchées par les puissances occidentales qui n'hésitent pas, à travers différents mécanismes, à s'installer sur le continent et à piller les ressources africaines. Mais ce pillage des ressources, en fait, se fait d'une manière qui impacte directement la vie des communautés et notamment des femmes, parce qu'il faut reconnaître que le contexte communautaire en Afrique, le contexte traditionnel, est dominé par une structure patriarcale, traditionnelle patriarcale, qui, euh, euh, qui a contribué pendant des décennies à fragiliser la position des femmes et à amplifier le travail non rémunéré des femmes et, à augmenter le travail de soins. Alors, quand des industries extractives s'installent sur des territoires en Afrique, ce sont les femmes qui perdent leurs moyens de subsistance parce que les femmes sont celles qui sont intimement liées à la nature parce qu'elles exploitent les ressources, elles exploitent le bois, elles sont celles qui vont chercher de l'eau, collecter de l'eau pour la communauté. Et donc, en RDC, par exemple, avec le projet INGA, qui consistait à venir installer un barrage une centrale thermique pour acheminer de l'électricité depuis le Congo-Kinshasa vers l'Afrique du Sud, notamment au service du capitalisme. Hein. Les femmes et les communautés autour du site de projet ont été expropriées de leurs terres et ont perdu tous leurs moyens de subsistance. Elles ont perdu leur cheptel, tout ce qui leur permettait de garantir la survie d'elles et de leur famille. Euh, c'est cette même réalité que subissent euh, euh, les femmes au Burkina Faso, où nous travaillons avec la communauté de Bomboré, qui est une communauté impactée par les industries minières. Une mine, une mine une entreprise, une multinationale canadienne qui s'est installée euh, sur le site et qui a exproprié des centaines d'hectares de terre des communautés. Et les femmes de ces communautés-là, de la communauté de Bomboré, à la base, n'étaient pas du tout organisées pour résister. Parce que très souvent, quand ces industries extractives s'installent sur les territoires, elles font croire aux communautés qu'elles viennent pour leur apporter du progrès et pour améliorer leurs conditions de vie. Elles leur font des promesses d'emploi et à la fin, et lorsque la mine est installée, la déchéance commence parce que les communautés se retrouvent expropriées donc, de leurs terres. Elles perdent les terres agricoles et pour les femmes, ça signifie encore plus de travail euh, pour, euh, pour s'occuper de la famille parce elles sont déplacées vers des zones où elles n'ont plus accès aux ressources en eau ou à la forêt qui leur permettait voilà, d'avoir du bois ou d'avoir de quoi se nourrir, etc. Et, euh, par exemple, au Mali également, avec l'implantation l'extension d'un projet de moulin moderne du Mali, c'est un projet agricole qui a permis à un opérateur privé de s'accaparer plus d'une centaine d'hectares de terre. Il a aussi, les communautés sont en résistance justement parce que finalement, elles ont perdu leur, leurs moyens de subsistance. Et aux côtés de cette communauté-là, nous nous tenons depuis près d'une dizaine d'années aujourd'hui pour justement aider les femmes à s'organiser et à réclamer leurs droits et permettre aussi aux femmes, à travers différents outils et approches participatives, de prendre la tête des revendications. Parce que très souvent, comme je le mentionnais tantôt, la société traditionnelle ne permet pas aux femmes, en Afrique en tout cas, d'avoir un mot à dire quand il s'agit de prise de décision. Et donc, très souvent, elles ne sont pas associées aux discussions autour de l'implantation, par exemple, d'un projet de développement qui pourtant va venir les priver en premier lieu de leurs moyens de subsistance et qui va augmenter leur charge de travail. Alors, ce système des industries extractives est soutenu en fait euh, euh, par un système financier international qui a été pensée au bénéfice des puissances occidentales parce que ce sont elles qui, finalement, exploitent les ressources africaines pour leur seul et pour leur propre bénéfice. Alors, des institutions financières comme la Banque mondiale ou même le FMI sont ceux qui dominent l'architecture financière mondiale et qui ne permettent pas et qui financent les entreprises, les multinationales étrangères qui viennent en Afrique s'accaparer des ressources naturelles des Africaines sans pour autant s'assurer qu'elles puissent disposer d'un minimum des ressources naturelles qui leur permettraient de continuer à garantir leur survie et celle de leur famille. Et la Banque africaine de développement que nous ciblons particulièrement dans le cadre de l'injustice de développement et de l'injustice économique que le système mondial financier impose aux Africains et aux Africaines, est une banque qui a été pensée par ceux qu'on a appelés les pères fondateurs du panafricanisme. Ici, on fait référence à Kwame Nkrumah, on fait référence à Sékou Touré, à William Tubman du Libéria, l'ancien président du Libéria, qui ont été les pères fondateurs, en tout cas ceux qui ont porté l'idée d'une banque panafricaine au sorti des indépendances, pour justement permettre aux États africains nouvellement indépendants de penser le développement en fonction de leurs besoins et de leurs priorités. Mais très vite, cette institution financière, qui est censée être une institution panafricaine et africaine, c'est s'est retrouvé, enfin, se trouve être un outil au service de l'impérialisme et met en œuvre des politiques néolibérales qui détruisent la vie des femmes africaines. Le modèle de développement, en fait, que la Banque africaine de développement finance ne répond pas du tout aux priorités de développement des femmes africaines et est complètement déconnecté des réalités du terrain. Dans beaucoup de pays où nous travaillons dans le cadre de la campagne en Afrique de l'Ouest et centrale notamment, ont relevé que les femmes ont remonté que quand le projet s'installe sur leur territoire, elles, normalement, devraient bénéficier. Enfin, la Banque africaine de développement a développé des mesures de sauvegarde. D'accord. La Banque africaine à développer des mesures de sauvegarde qui devraient favoriser, qui devraient permettre que les droits des communautés ou les projets de développement s'installent puissent être respectés. Cependant, la réalité du terrain montre que partout où des projets qui ont été financés par la BAD se sont installés sur le continent africain, la vie des femmes et de leurs communautés ont été fragilisées, leurs moyens de subsistance ont été détruits. Et peut-être pour finir rapidement, je vais juste parler de justice climatique et dire que afin l'extractivisme, en fait, a un lien direct avec la crise climatique que nous rencontrons. Et ça se renforce à travers les modes de vie occidentaux qui ont créé le changement climatique à travers l'industrialisation et et, et tout ce que nous savons. Et donc, pour permettre aux femmes africaines de regagner leur dignité et de s'organiser pour résister et demander une justice climatique, nous soutenons la création d'espaces de revendication et de résistance complètement, qui sont radicaux et qui sont à contre-courant de ce que le modèle dominant essaie de nous faire croire comme étant des espaces de solution, comme les COP, qui sont en réalité des espaces de greenwashing et qui ne servent pas du tout à répondre aux besoins de ceux qui sont fragilisés et dont les vies sont menacées par le changement climatique. Je pense que je vais m'arrêter là et on pourra peut-être aller un peu plus en détail dans les questions et réponses. Merci.
Thank you very much, Comrade Renee, for your wonderful presentation. Now to our second speaker, Comrade Mena. Towards a Feminist Consciousness is an African queer feminist blog founded in 2017. MENA is located in Western Sahara. They use Pan-Africanist theory and Marxist theory as frames of reference for their work, their vision and analytical tools with which to dismantle colonialism, patriarchy, heteronormativity, capitalism, racism, and to envision an alternative world. They take African feminism and Pan-Africanism as an example for their political and revolutionary practices and a source for their political organization. Welcome, Sister and Comrade Mena, one of the founders of Feminist Consciousness, and you may begin your 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahma. Thank you, everyone. I'm really, really honored to be here today for this really important event. And thank you also to the A-APRP and to all Africans Women's Revolutionary Party as well for this event. I want to turn on my camera, but I cannot for some reason. Okay, let me start it now. I'm very pleased to be here with you guys today. My name is Mana. As Rama has already introduced it, I am from Feminist Consciousness, or in Arabic, Nahawa Anisawi. It's a platform that was created, and it is based in Western Sahara, North Africa. We mainly focus on feminist knowledge production, and also campaigns in favor of situation in the African context and also in the Arabic-speaking countries in the region. Today and every day for us is every day for us as African feminists is an opportunity to learn about the history of our ancestors and our history and the ancestors who led the liberation battles not only against colonialism but against the patriarchal system and its oppressive norms. It is a reminder of the duty that we all have to continue these battles and to continue our role in this fight for our liberation. And like every struggle, oppressive and colonialist regimes across the continent continue to politically whitewash our history and the struggles of our ancestors, to cover up their contribution to our oppression and to maintain the norms and forms of systems of violence that controls us, and strive to strip this day and this memory of its radical political meaning for us and for our liberation. The same regimes that claim to celebrate the struggle of African women and their contribution to the liberation battles against colonialism are the ones that maintain the male-dominated colonial laws that are hostile to our rights and sexual freedoms, and the deadly laws and policies that are enacted every day against our queer communities, the latest of which is what is happening in Ghana and Uganda and Egypt as well, under the name of family values. And that translates the desire of these regimes to maintain heteronormativity and the patriarchal family as the face of society and as a way to control and shape them. These really hostile laws that we saw this year come in effect are not just 3 years of imprisonments or the illegal, the illegal nature to control the different sexualities that exist in our continent and exist in our different societies, and the identities that are being marginalized by these laws, but also the nature of these laws and their really, really violent sentences, which is what Uganda has taken into effect with the death penalty, just shows us how our existence and how our identities are being threatened by a Western view that these regimes strive to maintain and strive to indoctrinate in our societies. These regimes are the same regimes that ally with colonialism and capitalism to plunder our wealth, exploit our resources and lands, and suppress our bodies and destinies. These and our history and contributed to the assassination and imprisonment of liberation and our ancestors who also were very active in this liberation war and the struggles and their symbols for our societies, for our history, and for our continent as a whole. To commemorate this memory as a daily struggle, we must confront these oppressive and hostile regimes by adapting the foundation and issues on which this day was built upon, and to remember the battles that were fought to bring this day forward and bring this memory forward. We cannot lead liberation battles on our continent without adapting and adopting an African unity, scientific socialism, and the struggle against colonialism in all its forms, capitalism, patriarchy, and heteronormativity that crush us every single day. In order to join these battles that are still being led by many revolutionary organizations on the continent and the African diaspora as well, we must understand the history of African unity as a revolutionary discourse that emerged as a direct opposition to capitalism and European colonialism, and to the worst forms of exploitation and occupation carried out by humans. Despite all the patriarchal practices that characterizes many of these organizations, we must hold on to our position and the position our ancestors has built on them. Women who challenged slavery and colonialism were also challenging the patriarchal imperialist culture and fought it even at home and in the ranks of the revolution. We are at a massive need today for a unity and cross-regional solidarity. The various inflicted wars that we are seeing today and the many conflicts that are displacing people, the violence that we are seeing every single day, and the social movements and political shifts that are happening around our continent needs all hands on deck for our people to survive and to be able to move forward in justice and in liberation. Pan-Africanist needs to seize these crucial moments to build strong solidarity connection across our regions, and most importantly, to establish an educative movement that reaches the masses and teaches our history and how they fit into it and the role each individual and collective can carry on in our continental liberation, especially when it comes to the effect of the global north and its capitalist greed on our environment, on our lands and our ways of lifestyle. We are seeing every single in every single region across the continent, different new waves of environmental change that are not only deadly and violent, but they are also affecting the sustainability lives that we see around our continent. The greed of the global north is moving, and it's not affecting them and their region, it is affecting us. We have seen it recently in the Caribbean and in the different places around Africa where especially, for example, speaking from my own region, the drought that has carried on for the past 5 years has affected the people. People are moving from their lifestyle that has been sustained and has lived alongside nature for many years and many decades. It's affected by the global north greed and affected by the lifestyle that is carried in the global north. But we see that effect in our lands and in the lifestyle that our people are trying as best as they can to keep carrying. The damage inflicted by wars on our environment is a must also to take into effect and to take into consideration when we are speaking about environmental justice. We cannot turn a blind eye to how all of these wars and all of these conflicts that are carried by the greedy capitalist Westerners in our lands, how it is affecting our environment and how it is not just affecting the now and the present, but it is going to be a huge problem for our future generation. We have to try as best as we can to create more knowledge about this and to educate the people of the role that the North is playing in these wars and in these conflicts, and their greed in stealing our resources and to plunder our lands, and how that is going to be our responsibility to carry in the future and not Thank you so much for this opportunity. Again, a little bit of time left, but now as our for our people and for our organization and for the people who are being here to take into consideration building more connection and more solidarity ties, to be educated about the different things that are happening in our continent. We cannot speak of a generalized view. We have to take into consideration the different contexts that are happening and the different realities that are taking place, so we can build a more inclusive perspective of liberation, how it must be carried in the future while including women and LGBTQIA communities around Africa, and most importantly to take into consideration that these communities are the most communities that get affected in terms of war, in times of greedy neo-colonialist regimes that take place in our continent. We must bring them forward in the different discourses that we are carrying about liberation and about revolution, and to take into consideration that they are always affected, especially in the different political shifts that are happening right now in our continent. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you all to the panelists that are being here today and for their insights in this panel. I'm gonna pass it back to you, Rama. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Mina, and we will do well to remember our duties in fighting for our liberation. And now to our third speaker, Nehanda. Nehanda Imara worked as an organizer for the A-APRP and the A-AWRU for 40 years. Currently, she is a teacher for African American and Environmental Studies at Merritt College. Nehanda created the first environmental racism justice course at the Peralta Community College District. She also teaches African American sociology with a focus on W.E.B. Du Bois, the first American urban sociologist. Nehanda has done community work in East Oakland since 2007, working with communities for a better environment. East Oakland Building Healthy Communities and the East Oakland Black Cultural Zone. Nehanda was an organizer with Communities for a Better Environment for 10 years. In that role, she engaged residents and youth in fighting against environmental racism and for a just transition away from dirty pollution systems and a cleaner and more sustainable environmental policies. Nehanda created the W.E.B. Du Bois Scholarship Program, taking students to Ghana, and serves as a coordinator of Merit's Black Consciousness Raising Tours of Africa and the African diaspora, and she continues to take groups to Ghana. Welcome, Nehanda, and you may take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. Thank you, everyone. It's an honor to be here. I do have slides. Wata, are you able to load up the slides while I say thank you to all the sisters that came before and those who will come next? Just honored to be here with you all. But I would like the slides to come up. If you would like me to share mine, I can do that also. Okay, that's kind of small. There we go. Thank you so much. So I'll just start by talking about, that's the title, but the role African women have played in environmental conservation, preservation, and as part of what is now called environmental justice. All of this has been suppressed in history. African women have always protected the environment through sacred practices of resource management and cultural practices such as forest protection and planting trees like she does today. Let's put African women back into the history of environmental justice. Next slide. African women were the first farmers of the world. Anthropologists called them gatherers, the creators of agriculture. They were one with the land and are one with the land. So they cared for the land, and they do care for the land. Next slide. That's not my slide. Okay. I learned more about the environmentalism of African people when I visited Bahia, Brazil. I learned about candomblé and the orishas as an African cultural expression and an African philosophy that has respect for the ocean, the land, and the waters. I learned that the orishas are energies of nature. They are not gods. They are not deities. Yemanya is the energy of the ocean and the seas. Oshun is the energies of the rivers and healing waters. And Shango, the energy of thunder. enslaved Africans entered Brazil with their own culture and their own philosophy. This African way of life puts nature at the core of all of our beliefs and our practices. We created Candomblé, a philosophy in honor of the Orishas that are life energies in nature. Next slide. However, what we do know is that today's environmental crisis is because of capitalist exploitation of global resources, and especially of Africans and African people. The enslavement of African people struck the first blow that caused today's climate catastrophe, that caused food injustice, land grabs, and severe health impacts, especially impacting African women and children first and worst. But African people have always had an environmental ethic, a love of environmental justice, even if we didn't call it that. Next slide. I'll just give you a local example here in Oakland, California, the Black Panther Party. In April 1970, Black Panther Chairman Bobby Seals directed the chapters to open healthcare clinics. At its peak, there were clinics in 13 cities where volunteers dispensed basic medical care as well as housing assistance and legal aid. By providing medical care and food to the people, the Black Panther Party was expressing health and food justice, two principles of environmental justice. Next slide. So the history of the modern environmental justice movement was sparked by an incident in 1982 in Warren County, North Carolina. For 6 weeks in 1982, activists and residents gathered in Warren County to protest the delivery of 40,000 cubic tons of contaminated soil laced with PCBs. The PCBs would eventually leach into the ground and contaminate the water supply. PCBs stand for polychlorinated biphenyls. PCBs were widely used in paint, plastics, and adhesives. Scientists discovered that if inhaled or absorbed through the skin, the chemicals can cause birth defects and cancer. You see Dr. Ben Chavis there. He coined the term at one of these demonstrations, this is environmental racism, he said. At the time, Ben Chavis was the director of the United Church of Christ Commission on Racial Equality. Next slide. But African women and girls were the backbone of this movement, and this is a suppressed history. Next slide. African women organized many of the meetings and were the most arrested. The protests, though unsuccessful, garnered the attention of the civil rights leaders and environmentalists in the United States and is commonly recognized as the birthplace of environmental justice movement in this country. Next slide. More than 500 people were arrested. This was the largest number of folks arrested for protesting an environmental issue ever. And this historic fact has been largely left out of the mainstream environmental movement. Similarly, African women were largely invisibilized in this history. Next slide. Finally, we close looking at Miss Margaret Gordon, who's known here in Oakland, California, as the grandmother of environmental justice in West Oakland, California. Miss Margaret teaches us that the toxic waste and pollution in West Oakland results from the legacy of racism in housing and economics and other policies. As a resident of a historically African community, Miss Margaret sees climate justice as a form of reparations, a payment to repair the harm of conscious decisions, such as government leaders allowing toxic industries to operate in our neighborhoods, devaluing the lives of African people. And finally, other African women environmentalists that have been suppressed in history. There's so many, this is just a few. Wangari Maathai, a Kenyan who wrote the book Unbowed, a memoir. Keisha Perry, Jamaican-born. She wrote the book Black Women Against the Land Grab, The Fight for Racial Justice in Brazil. Dorcetta Taylor, Jamaican-born, who wrote the book Toxic Communities, Environmental Racism, Industrial Pollution, and Residential Mobility. And finally, Linda McKeever Bullard. She was a judge who sued Houston, Texas, in Harris County for racism under the Civil Rights Act because of a private landfill site that was being planned just 1,500 feet from a school in a largely African suburb community. This lawsuit was one of the first to charge environmental racism, and she happens to be the wife of Robert Bullard, who is known as the father of environmental justice. And with them as working as a team, her suing the county, Robert Bullard, as a sociologist, did research noting where toxic waste sites were located in the African community all throughout the US. I'll end there, and I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Mihanda. And thank you to our incredible panelists for sharing their powerful insights and perspectives on the impact of climate change, oppression, and capitalism on African women. Today's discussion has highlighted the urgent need to address the systemic inequalities and oppressive structures that perpetuate gender-based discrimination and exploitation. So let us continue to amplify the voices and stories of African women and poor people and work towards creating a more just and equitable society. Now to some questions. Mina, you have a question. Hello, Comrade Mina.
Yes,
so
I'm around.
Somebody wants to know what books you would recommend on Pan-African women.
Can you please repeat that?
What books by Pan-African women would you recommend?
I can send a few suggestions on the chat, or maybe the accounts on social media for the organization can maybe post that. We have also a very great initiative that the collective that I am part of have started a few years ago, which is a combination of a lot of powerful texts and resources and books around the feminist movement and around the history the history of the continent and the struggles of women in Africa towards liberation and their role also in the different social movements and liberation movements that happened in history. I can maybe share that, and it will be a great resource to share amongst the people who have been here today.
Thank you very much, Nina. Now there's another question that's general, so any member from the panel can answer. What is the relationship between the liberation of African women and the African people? So any of the comrades from the panel can answer that question. Thank you.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What is the relationship between the liberation of African women and the African people?
I can get a start on that. I'll reply as briefly as possible. I don't think we can separate the two. I think women around Africa are also people of people and belongers of the African continent. But it must be said that the different liberation movements that we have had throughout the history, and even the important
We
world.
have 2 minutes to answer the question.
Yes, sure. That the important role that women have played in these revolution, and even when these movements, for example, have reached the goals that were set to be reached, or even made some milestones in their journey, the first thing to always do is to disregard the contribution of women in these movements, and disregard their role, and even move them to very small rules in the steps to come. So I think the rule, the importance of making it known that women are play a really huge role in the liberation of Africa and the liberation of African people. It is to remember that their role is already being played in our daily realities. The sustainability and the survival of the people of Africa rely heavily on the roles that women play in their daily lives. We see villages, we see countries that are built on the backs of women. But at the end of the day, when it comes to stating what happened, or state who were the heroes, or to give the credit, it is always women who are being disregarded, even though they are the ones who are the wheel that keep these communities surviving and keeps them ongoing. So I don't think we can separate the two. I think we have to reach a point where we do not separate these two entities, or look at one as being more important, or one that is being less. So I think we need to reach a point where we make it a unified front, and a unified also effort. I don't think that I might have answered that really briefly, but I'm going to pass to my fellow panelists.
I'll just add very briefly, so many of our leaders have said, if you educate a man, you educate an individual. If you educate a woman, you educate a nation. And so where the African woman goes, so goes the African nation. So without the liberation of women, there will be no liberation of African people. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you very much, panelists. It was amazing listening to you all, and we've learned a lot, and thank you very much.
All right. Hey, everyone. Happy Pan-African Women's Day. Once again, we have had an amazing first panel. And if you have not already given it up for our panelists and our beautiful, wonderful moderator, please do so now. What a very impactful and very heartfelt video that we were able to just witness, right? Can we just take a moment to just think about the different symbolism, the synergy, the collectivism, the humanitarianism that we saw in that video? I'm thinking personally about how it starts off with a very calming scene where we're noticing that folks are doing what they do, being able to provide for one another and their families. And then we start to see the greed, the corruption coming in. We see people in power and control who are completely annihilating trees, providing oxygen, shade, all of these resources that we may benefit more greatly if we had access to. And then we see African people who are saying, this is not okay. We are not going to accept this. And they are starting to fight back. They've always fought back. But in that video, we see the different techniques that they're applying. So they are putting blockages on the railroad tracks so the trains can no longer move forward. We see them stacking the rocks because they're blocking something else from taking place by those rocks being in the way. The point we are trying to make to you all today is that when people say absurd things such as African people don't fight back, or African women don't fight back, and we're not strong, and we just take oppression, please remember this video. And if you do nothing else, you should speak against that. Because after these amazing panelists that we just heard from and this very heartfelt video that we just watched, it is very clear that that has always been a statement that is simply not true. We have always fought back. As a matter of fact, if we had not been fighting as much as we had been, African people everywhere would be in so much more of a worse condition. You think things are bad now? Just take a moment to think about if none of our ancestors had fought back. Just take a moment to really think about that. For one, none of us would be here because they wouldn't be alive to give birth to us. But second, we should think about how they have taught us what it means to resist. That's literally coursing through our veins. So we don't have to accept the current conditions for what they are. We can continue to fight back. And the best way we can do that is by joining an organization that is working for justice. Because when we join an organization that is working for justice, it allows us to be in a different position where we can start to understand how we can pull our skills and our talents and our resources together so that we can do what needs to be done, so that people can have what they need, and we all can terminate suffering. With that, I am going to humbly introduce our keynote speaker. Dr. Hannah Muzi currently works as a part-time lecturer at Kyambogo University and is a technical advisor at the Collaboration for Eastern and Southern Africa, known as CIPESA, abbreviated, in Kampala, Uganda. She holds a PhD in governance and regional integration from the Pan-African University Institute of Governance, Humanities, and Social Sciences, and the University of Yaoundé, the second, SOA, Cameroon. Hannah is an author of several referred journals, articles, book chapters, and an edited book on democracy and Africanness. Hannah's research interests lie in gender, politics, deliberated democracy, feminism, social media, governance, and politics in Africa. I should also point out that Comrade Hannah is also a proud pre-cadre member of the All African People's Revolutionary Party and the All African Women's Revolutionary Union. And I should mention that I am also a member of a supporting member of this organization with the Nzinga Circle. And so again, we are encouraging you all. The takeaway from today's broadcast is to join an organization that is working for justice so you can help us collectively resist and fight back the oppression that we experience. Without further ado, let's please welcome Comrade Hannah Musi, Dr. Comrade Hannah Musi.
On behalf of Comrade Nancy and the All African Women's Revolutionary Union, the women's wing of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, we extend sincere and heartfelt greetings to you and sincere gratitude to you for joining us as we commemorate Pan-African Women's Day. This is an occasion with a glorious history. The Pan-African Women's Organization, the first continental-wide women's organization, was created on July 31st, 1962 in Dar es Salaam. We remember with reverence the first Secretary General of the Pan-African Women's Organization, Comrade Sister Jeanne Martin Cissé of Guinea. We honor all the forward-thinking comrade sisters who attended the monumental event where women came together to coordinate the struggle against injustice, to coordinate their resistance against the imperialist, colonialist, and neo-colonialist powers that dominated Africa's landscape through brute military force. These women came together on that great historic day to forge revolutionary Pan-African unity, to coordinate a path towards total liberation of Africa in general and the emancipation of women in particular. As they wisely understood that Africa could not be free without the active, vital participation of women and without the equality of African women. We proudly honor the legacy of these powerful African women who laid a revolutionary foundation for us to follow. We proudly continue this violent struggle against gender oppression and for the total liberation and the unification of Africa and the scientific socialism. Today, we come together to discuss a manifestation of imperialism that is so devastating that it threatens the existence of all life on Earth, the ongoing degradation of environment, and the massive destructions of ecosystems. It's a manifestation of imperialism because the historic roots and the current expression result directly from theft through violent dispossession over the course of centuries of colonialism, capitalism, and imperialism. Every part of life of every person, and indeed every form of life on Earth, is being impacted by these disastrous actions, which are resulting in a devastating change to the Earth's climate. And while all people are impacted, in reality, there's a disproportionate impact on the basis of where in the world we reside, our socioeconomic status, and our gender. This year's commemoration of Pan-African Women's Day, we will apply this nation-class gender analysis to this question. In all respects, the rapid, successful economic growth of all the Western imperialist nations, including the US, Canada, Western Europe, Israel, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand, entirely resulted from and continue to be sustained by centuries of theft and expropriation of resources, land, and labor of the exploited nations. And nowhere is this theft greater than against the continent of Africa, which has the largest known reserves of natural resources of any continent. The extraction of these resources, the enslavement of people, and the vast military forces used to suppress resistance are directly responsible for environmental degradation and climate change. So, the destruction of environment and extreme climate activity can only be properly understood within this context. Throughout history, the incursion of settler colonialism by European invaders drastically changed the relationship between humans and environment. Every colonial encounter was viewed as an opportunity to exploit and commodify the land, the resources, and the people for the benefit and the massive enrichment of the colonizers. Prior to colonial invention, indigenous people worldwide consistently served as custodians of lands, territories, and resources. Through deliberate, scientific, and responsible land and water management, they kept the waters pure, the airs clean, and the forests lush. They respected the integrity of biodiversity. Utilizing indigenous knowledge, they balanced the earth's health with sustainable practices that protected nature. Invaders, however, disregarded and replaced traditional ecological stewardship with capitalistic model, resulting in immediately devastating and long-term consequences. Driven by profit, the settlers ushered in a period of massive clearing of forests for cattle grazing, cash crops, logging, development of cities, and extraction of natural resources. Stolen land and unpaid labor of enslaved people exponentially increased the productive capacity and industrial development of colonizing nations, and thus rapidly increased the thirst for resources. The abundance of converted raw materials such as gold, iron, silver, oil, tin, combined with the unpaid labor by enslaved African people, revolutionized industrialization for the United States of America and Western Europe. This created an insatiable desire for fossil fuels, primarily oil and coal, to power the machines and the manufacturing production process. The motive for this production was profit for the colonizers, and this greed led to overproduction. Overproduction provided massive profits, but required markets throughout the world, increasing their intercontinental transport and contributing significantly to increased use of fossil fuels. It also led to excessive waste, which created a problem of disposal. The impact on indigenous people was death and displacement. They were slaughtered, and survivors were thrown off ancestral lands and forced to assimilate into the unsustainable practices conducted by the colonizers. Traditional ecological knowledge systems were degenerated and regarded as primitive by the colonialists. These included indigenous peoples' lands that encompass culture, relationships, ecosystems, social systems, spirituality, and sustenance. Colonial land grabbing brought land dispossession, environmental pollution, threats to their knowledge system, massive gender violence, intimidations, and assassinations. Colonialists' introduction of non-native species were often invasive, often disrupting local ecosystems. From increased use of fossil fuels, which release large amounts of carbon dioxide into the air, to the extensive deforestation that reduced the capacity of trees to absorb carbon dioxide, colonialism set into place the numerous patterns of atrocious disruptions, leading to climate change, which we see today. Even in colonialist countries, neighborhoods inhabited by African people are subject to dangerous effects of industrial pollution. ProPublica, a non-profit news source, stated that Black communities across the US bear a disproportionate health burden from industrial pollution. On average, the level of cancer risk from industrial air pollution in majority Black census tract is more than double that of majority white tracts. None of this is an accident. It is sustained by policymakers. It still goes back to we Black people as not seen as fully human. Carbon dioxide emissions account for 2/3 of climate change, which in turn directly cause the massive floods, forest fires, intensive storms, excessive temperatures, and other unprecedented climate emergencies that we see. The United States has emitted more carbon dioxide than any country to date, at around 400 billion tons since the 1950s. It's responsible for a staggering 25% of historic emissions. By contrast, during the same period, Africa has been responsible for the less than 1/10 of 1%. Africa and other exploited areas such as in Asia and South America have done the least to cause climate change, yet are being harmed the most. And while all African people are harmed, the greatest impact is being borne by women and children, especially the girl child. This is largely the result of patriarchal structures that have placed women and girls in the lowest economic strata, where they're self-employed, or work in the informal sector, where they earn an average of 30% less than men. Often, this salary has to support children, elderly parents, or other extended family. Many girls are pressured to leave school in order to help their families. Women also suffer work health outcomes during climate disasters, especially if they're pregnant or have recently given birth. Although discussions about gender often revolve around women and girls, all genders of people have unique vulnerabilities that must be understood and addressed. In pre-colonial Africa and among indigenous cultures throughout the world, there have been a range of roles which people fulfill regardless of gender. Additionally, people have expressed a variety of non-conforming gender identities. Colonial expansion, which brought with it rigid religious and cultural norms, imposed their world view on peoples that they encountered. They exported repressive transphobic laws that continue to inform the attitudes of some post-colonial African leaders, resulting in continued repression through tough legislation, punishment, and even death. This marginalization comes with violence and discrimination, placing non-conforming gender people in a vulnerable position in the face of climate and environmental breakdowns. This year is on target to become the hottest year on record as the global average temperature rise continues to increase. A record flooding, increased storms, devastating flooding, loss of habitat, loss of biodiversity, loss of human life ravage the earth. People are not standing still. Oppression results in resistance, much of it led by Pan-African women organizations who are resisting the land grabbing, resisting extraction of materials in their homeland, and resisting a culture of violence that target women and marginalized genders around the world. Still around the world, citizens are fighting climate change and the system that causes it by taking control of the flood system, directly confronting imperialist corporate control over resources such as seeds, fertilizers, land, and water. In industrialized areas, people are fighting against the dumping of toxic waste in their communities. They are fighting against false solutions that propose so-called green extraction that focuses on the minerals and metals that are needed for the technologies that address climate change, such as lithium batteries, wind turbines, solar cells, or electric vehicles. It also includes generating energy through green gas, hydrogen, and mega dams. These solutions result in a cleaner environment in capitalist nations, while continuing the extractivist threat of raw materials. They are fighting against the perpetuation of the lie that extractivism creates employment in oppressed countries. The people are fighting against these solutions because they're not solutions. Capitalism offers no solutions. Global capitalism is closing climate change, and only the destruction of capitalism will create the conditions for genuine and permanent solutions. The necessary structural transformation will only be achieved through organized revolutionary political struggle of workers, peasants, pastoralists, fishers, and all the masses, unified against patriarchy, colonialism, imperialism in all their manifestations. The All-African People's Revolutionary Party and the All-African Women's Revolutionary Union reject patriarchal exclusion, marginalization, and gender-based violence. We condemn the collaboration of neoliberal African leaders who are willing to place resources, land, water, and other resources at the disposal of international imperialists. We vehemently condemn the imperialist US-led militarization of Africa through Africa. We seek to violently maintain control of African resources. We stand in revolutionary solidarity with the worldwide resistance against the imperialist destruction of Earth for profit. And we therefore invite you to join us as we continue to build a revolutionary mass-based political party to serve and to aid in bringing together all truly revolutionary African and international socialist organizations toward worldwide unity. We stand ready to build Pan-Africanism, the total liberation of unification of Africa under scientific socialist continental government to control Africa's land and resources for the progress of African people, with a single military to protect Africa's people and their interests, and a single monetary system, which will free Africa from US and European financial domination and exploitation. Pan-Africanism will enable Africa to serve the colonial relations that rob our resources and subject us to environmental and climate injustice. Pan-Africanism will create the conditions to defeat patriarchal gender oppression. Pan-Africanism will enable African people to protect our beautiful terrain, bountiful biodiversity, vital waterways, vast forests, and all our resources for the future generations of African people. Pan-Africanism or perish. We stand ready for the revolution. Israeletu e Africa. Adietu Africa.
All right. Yes. Can we give it up for our comrade, Dr. Hannah Muzi? Beautiful, beautiful words we heard from the comrade. Just echoing a couple of things that Dr. Hannah mentioned, talking about the industrial pollution, understanding that, we are still not seen as full humans as Africans, right? And then also understanding how the extraction of materials has really continued to promote capitalism to protect private entities and making money, while the impact of that on thousands of families around the world that are now starving, that are now dehydrated, that are now suffering from other ailments, be it health, mental health, physical health, socioeconomic health, whatever that may look like. And then also kind of seeing basically the bottom line is with the All African People's Revolutionary Party and with other organizations that are working for justice, there is an argument that the reason we believe in a one unified socialist Africa is because we understand that under scientific socialism, patriarchy doesn't exist. Don't you see? We understand that under a scientific socialism, capitalism doesn't exist. We understand that under a scientific socialism, sexism, homophobia, any system of oppression that devalues another person is non-existent under the scientific socialism that we are trying to build. And Comrade Nehanda said it best earlier. I will quote our founding father, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who said, the degree of a country's political education can best be measured by the education of its women. So we have no choice, you all. We must address the inequities that African women, marginalized genders, and femme-presenting African people are facing if we want to achieve a one unified socialist Africa. We cannot ignore it because it will not benefit the rest of us if we don't address the issues, the social issues that we are finding ourselves still dealing with. And if we ignore them, we will never, ever achieve the scientific socialism that we hope to gain. Because if we're not even addressing how we treat one another, then how can we help the rest of the world see that we deserve to be treated better? So with that, we are going to now hear from our second panel. We hope you are still fired up and ready to go. Comrade Lioness, you have the floor. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Greetings. I can't say evening to everyone because we're in different parts of the world. My name is Lioness Zibande. I am a political activist from the tiny kingdom in the southern of Africa called Swaziland. I will be chairing this second panel discussion. I would like to firstly apologize because I will switch off my video because it's going to affect my network. It's very low. Just wanted you to see me. Greet everyone, and then can I just switch it off? Our second panel discussion is on the topic that says women and their problems of environmental justice. Women and the problems of environmental justice on their livelihoods. We've got a speaker, but before I give to the speaker, women voices are very crucial in discussions about environmental issues because women often have deep knowledge of the environment they live in and the ecosystem. So empowering women and ensuring they have such discussions about how they are affected and just ensuring their meaningful participation in decision-making processes is crucial for achieving sustainable development and addressing environmental challenges, which then contributes to a more just and sustainable future for us all. We have our speaker tonight, who is Omaima Abdesalam. Can I briefly introduce her quickly? Omaima was born in Dakhla in Western Sahara. At the age of 5, she and her family fled to the Sahrawi camps and then traveled to Cuba for studying. She is an electronic and telecommunications engineer, graduated at the Universidad de Oriente, Cuba from 1991 to 1995. She was the Polisario Front representative to Finland and representative to Switzerland and other international organizations with HQ in Geneva until 2023. At the age of 2022, she returned to Western Sahara and joined the political struggle for the self-determination of her people. She is also a feminist, always advocating for women's rights. She speaks English, Arab, Spanish, and French, and is the mother of 3 children. Welcome, Comrade Omaima. You can have the floor. You have 10 minutes for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you very much for the persons who are present today. For me, it's a great honor to be with you, but I didn't know that Mena was coming because she is the real expert in all the questions in relation with feminism in Western Sahara, so I'm glad to be with her today in this celebration. I will say good morning, good evening, good night to everyone, because I think we are celebrating this day from all the world. It's an honor to speak with you today on this Pan-African Day webinar. I am Omaima Abdesalam, human rights defender from Western Sahara, and I will be discussing the critical issue of women and the impact of environmental injustice on their livelihoods with a specific focus on Western Sahara. As you know, Western Sahara remains one of the last remaining colonial territories in the world, with its people subjected to occupation and exploitation. This context of settler colonialism drastically affects both the environment and the livelihood of women in the region. Women's role in the environment stewardships. Historically, women have been the primary stewards of the environment, managing natural resources and sustaining their communities. In Western Sahara, Sahrawi women play a crucial role as caretakers, farmers, and leaders in local environmental practices. The environmental degradation and livelihoods. The occupation has led to significant environmental degradation through activities such as overexploitation of resources, sand mining, and pollution. This degradation threatens the local ecosystem of women who depends for their daily life, also for the water, traditional practices, leading to loss of food security and economic hardships. Settler colonialism introduces a form of environmental injustice where the occupying forces prioritize economic gains over environmental sustainability. In Western Sahara, this is evident through the extraction of phosphate and fisheries by foreign companies, which displace local resources and devastate the environment. The gender-specific impact. Environmental injustice disproportionately affects women. When land and resources are depleted, women often bear the brunt of increased labor to secure food, water, and livelihoods. In patriarchal societies, women's roles are traditionally less valued, leading to their marginalization and decision-making process related to the environment management. Pathway to empowerment and justice. It's essential to incorporate gender-sensitive approach in environmental policies and interventions. Empowering women throughout education, capacity building, and involvement in decision-making process can lead to more sustainable and equitable solutions. Globally, we must strive for environmental justice that recognizes and addresses the compound effect of gender, colonialism, and environmental degradation. In conclusion, addressing environmental injustice in Western Sahara requires acknowledging the unique challenges faced by women under occupation. By amplifying their voices and ensuring their active participation in environmental stewardship, we can foster resilience and equity. Thank you very much for listening. And of course, for me, it's an honor to be with you, and I'm ready to answer any question. Just remember that Sahara women, we are like any other women in the world. We are still fighting fiercely for our independence. We are using all kinds of resistance that can we use. We use pacific resistance. We use armed struggle. We use the justice in the local, in the international, like we use International Court of Justice to pursue all these enterprises that are plundering our resources. And Sahrawi people will not be an exception for the implementation of international law because the Sahrawi people, the volunteer of the Sahrawi people is that we impose our right to exist in our land without any kind of settler colonialism or any kind of injustice. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Comrade Maima. That was insightful, and it was an honor actually for me to introduce a comrade from Western Sahara, because I think our struggle in Swaziland is more like the same. I have a question for you, Comrade Imaima, which is how long has environmental injustice been an issue where you live? How long has environmental injustice been an issue where you live?
Yes, first of all, you have to remember that Sahrawi people, we live, West Sahara is a huge territory that we have around 1,200 kilometers of coast on the Ocean Atlantic, and it's a very desertic zone, so it's a very low populated area. But we have one of the biggest mines of phosphate. And actually, the Pacific nomads that always have lived in this land have been facing during centuries a lot of invasion due to their natural resources and due for accepting other occupations and other wars just because they want our territory. For example, when the Europeans have decided in the Berlin Agreement that they are going to divide Africa like it was a piece of cake. They decided to do that because they wanted to avoid wars between European countries. So my country at that time was, let's say, given, between brackets, to Spain because Spain wanted to defend Canary Islands. So since 1884, 100s of colonialism, the Sahrawis were rejected as citizens of second class. When we began our struggle and Western Sahara was put in the Security Council and the General Assembly as one of the non-self-governing territories that has to be independent. In 1963, the Sahrawis began a struggle. In this struggle, we were forced to leave our territory. So we were forced by the colonialists of yesterday and also by the the colonialists of today, which is Morocco, who is occupying our land, and have forced our people to flee our territory, part of our territory, to flee the territory and live in the refugee camp. So in the refugee camp, people are depending 100% from international help. You have to remember the Sahrawi people are Bedouins, and our lifestyle, it was like very friendly with the environment. We were carrying our camels, we were living friendly with in our land. And one day we were obliged to be sedentarists in a refugee camp, depending from international help. And this has affected a lot the life of the Sahrawi and their dignity. And second hand, the Sahrawis who are in the occupied area, they are living, my colleague Mena can add more about that because she's living in the occupied area. They are citizens of second class in their own land. They are not allowed to make association. They are not allowed to make any kind of business. And for example, if Sahrawi wants to, for example, profit from looking for looking for fish or making agriculture, the Moroccan authorities doesn't allow them. And the last part of this is a group of young Sahrawis who decided to look for a way of living by doing the mining and looking for the gold that it's thrown in the sand in Western Sahara. The Moroccan authorities also doesn't allow them. So Sahrawis are their life in the refugee camp and in the occupied area has been affected a lot by these occupations that we have faced during all these years. And until today, there is a wall who is dividing Western Sahara from north to south. It's around 2,714 kilometers. It's a huge thing. It's a wall made by humans, plenty of mines who has obliged the Sahrawi people to abandon their way of life as looking after the camels, their way of ecosystem. They cannot cross the border. They cannot move towards looking for more pasture greens for their animals. And this occupation has affected all the life of the Sahrawis. And even today, we cannot even find a small Sahrawi of 15 years ago. It's not the same Sahrawi of today. So this occupation has destroyed our life. And that's why the resilience of the Sahrawi people to resist is amazing. And actually, it's something to admire, especially the women who are in the first line of resistance in the occupied territory, are the one who are making demonstrations, are the one who are bringing information about prisoners, about the retaliation that the occupation is doing to the people. And in the refugee camp are the women are the one who are building a state in exile with these schools, with the hospitals, with everything, thanks to the empowerment of women. So maybe you can give the floor to Mena to do more.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I've got one last question. It's not specifically directed to you, but to all the panelists. Anyone can answer it. It's a general question that was sent. How as Pan-African women do we work to contend with the misogyny that we face from our male comrades and holding them accountable while continuing to work with them towards our ultimate goal of liberation for our people? This also goes with the homophobia and transphobia in our movement. how as Pan-African women we work to contend with the misogyny that we face from our male comrades and holding them accountable while continuing to work with them towards our ultimate goal of liberation for our people. This also goes with the homophobia and transphobia in our movement. That's the question. Any of the panelists can respond to it. If you want to start, you can go ahead since you're on the floor. But Comrade Nehanda, any of the panelists, you can respond to it.
Men also can respond to it. Yes, of course. For me, the best question is education. Educating women to be in the power, to give the opportunity of women to have political leadership, so we can achieve whatever we want. If we don't have that, forget it. And by educating women to achieve their social justice, it's achieving also the justice of all the women in the world. And fighting this homophobia and this rejection to women to be in power or to have rights, or even for all of us, the education is the best way. I think education is, and we have to look to the Europeans and to others who have reached almost 50-50, not 50-50, but almost. They are much better than us. We are still struggling to just impose ourselves as women in our societies, but we can learn a lot by education, by advocacy, by explaining why it's important to have political roles to achieve what we need. Yes, anyone can answer, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Umaima. I'm not sure, but can I give it back to Shukura? Shukura, thank you so much. Thank you, Umaima. It was a pleasure having you in the discussion of women and the problems of environmental justice on their livelihoods. It was a pleasure having you. Have a great evening. Can I give it back to you, Shukura? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's give it up for our panelists, you all. You all are amazing. Thank you so much. So much good, juicy information that has been shared today. Thank you, Comrade Lioness. So as we prepare to close out today's Pan-African Women's Day, we want to remind you that the struggle continues. So don't think that because today's event is coming to an end, the work is over. Far from it, my friends, far from it. We have so much work ahead of us, and we need to stay focused on that because our people are counting on us, right? And so just to reiterate what I kind of took from Comrade Omaima, as well as some of the other takeaways that I picked up on today's event, we've been pushing all day for you all to join an organization that was working for justice. But Comrade Omaima said something that I should have said earlier as well. In addition to you learning how to organize with other people in an organization that is working for justice, you'll be taught what the value of collectivism is, which is opposite of capitalism, because capitalism, imperialism, those are systems where you are taught to be the focus and where you put yourself first and you have a very individualized approach. Whereas the kind of work that we're trying to do, the resistance that we're asking you to join us with, it's not going to be productive if you are individualistic. It's not going to be effective if you are individualistic. And so Comrade Omaima said, we also need to educate ourselves. And I could not agree more with that. That's another ideology that this organization stands by. We call it political education. And what we're encouraging you all to do is to join some organization, even if it's not ours, where you all can develop some type of political education component. Because the bottom line is we don't have all the information, you all. If you learned anything from today's webinar, then that should humble you so you can understand you really have a lot more to learn. And so, how are we going to be able to fight back and resist if we don't take all the pebbles of wisdom that our ancestors have left for us? That would be a disservice to them. And we don't want to dishonor them. We don't want to disrespect them. We want to learn from them. We want to grow from them. We are grateful and we are humbled that they have documented what we need to do. So let's take that message from them. Let's learn from that so that we can make this world a better place for all oppressed people. And we can start with understanding that when you celebrate Pan-African Women's Day, you are celebrating the opportunity where you understand that organization is key, and where you also understand that you are not going to be able to organize unless you are doing the work on the ground, impacting people, helping people to resist and collectively organize together, which means being in an organization that's working for justice. And it also means honoring days that are not capitalistic, institutions such as this one. I will also say, before I pass it and introduce our closing remark, Comrade Fatou, to give our closing remarks, but I will also say that we also need to understand that we have a responsibility. Our people are counting on us. And more than that, we owe it to our ancestors to make a difference, because without them, we would be nothing. The saying Mbutu means I am because you are. And so that means that we understand that someone struggled for us to be here today. And that means we understand that we need to struggle so that our future generations, those that are born and those that have yet to be born, will have a better way of life. Don't we want that ultimately? Again, it's not about us, right? We're thinking past that. And so with that, Comrade Fatou is on the continent in Burkina Faso. She is a work study member at the Thomas Sankara Center. Comrade Fatou, thank you so much. Happy Pan-African Women's Day. I will pass it to you.
Merci, camarades. Merci à tous. Waouh, quel rassemblement nous avons eu aujourd'hui. Je voudrais remercier les panélistes pour leur analyse détaillée du sort des femmes africaines et pour leur écho aux stratégies clés que nous devons mettre en œuvre pour lutter contre l'impérialisme, le capitalisme et le néocolonialisme, qui sont la nature des soucis du maintien de l'oppression des femmes africaines. Les femmes sont au cœur de toute société. Elles s'occupent des enfants, des personnes âgées et des malades de leur communauté. Le travail de production alimentaire, d'eau et de carburant est une responsabilité qui incombe aux femmes. Par conséquent, lorsque les ressources s'épuisent, les femmes sont considérablement touchées. Elles doivent vivre dans un environnement difficile sans eau potable et nourriture de qualité, ce qui les rend, ainsi que leurs enfants, vulnérables aux maladies en particulier. En particulier les femmes enceintes et allaitantes. Un préjudice causé à une femme entraîne préjudice à l'ensemble de la société. Ce mal est propagé par la cupidité des nations impérialistes et capitalistes dont le but est de déstabiliser écologiquement nos beaux pays arabes et riches en ressources, laissant nos terres nues et horriblement dégradées. Pire encore, les femmes doivent supporter le double fardeau d'être physiquement compromises par la déstabilisation environnementale et d'autres, obligées de vendre leur travail aux industries qui détruisent leur communauté. Dans les industries capitalistes telles que l'exploitation minière, les femmes sont soumises à une grave oppression sexiste, comme le harcèlement sexuel de la part de leurs collègues masculins. Les femmes doivent faire preuve de prudence dans ces espaces car leur gagne-pain est toujours en jeu. Elles sont menacées de perdre leur emploi et contraintes d'accorder des faveurs sexuelles pour conserver leurs emplois. Le plus dur, c'est que l'avenir de leurs enfants est détruit car ils sont forcés de travailler dans ces industries, les privant des joies de leur enfance et les mettant en danger ou en risquant des blessures et une insuffisance cardiaque à long terme. Malheureusement, tous ces dommages sont cautionnés par les gouvernements néocolonialistes, alliés de l'impérialisme, qui mettent en jeu la vie des plus vulnérables de leur société pour de l'argent liquide et des promesses vides de sens. Nous ne pouvons plus rester les bras croisés et regarder périr les enfants, les fruits de notre société. Les femmes africaines subissent depuis trop longtemps la colère de l'impérialisme. Des règnes déchaînés du patriarcat à l'époque précoloniale, aujourd'hui exacerbés au maximum après le colonialisme. La vie des femmes africaines est toujours en danger sous les armes de l'impérialisme. L'oppression basée sur le genre et l'injustice environnementale constituent un combat puissant et les femmes s'organisent pour éradiquer une myriade de conditions d'oppression. La bonne nouvelle est que les femmes luttent contre la violence sexiste et contre la myriade de conditions d'oppression qui contribuent à leurs problèmes. Elles sont en première ligne contre le pillage des ressources et, de plus en plus, ce sont des mouvements dirigés par des femmes qui mènent la lutte pour récupérer les terres. Mais cette résistance a un prix élevé. Dans le monde, près de 200 militants écologistes ont été assassinés au cours des 15 dernières années. Les sociétés multinationales et les fonctionnaires corrompus engagent des tueurs à gages, des groupes de crimes organisés et d'autres pour protéger leurs intérêts économiques. Plus de 1700 défenseurs de la terre et de l'environnement ont été assassinés entre 2012 et 2021. La plupart de ces meurtres ont eu lieu au Brésil, en Colombie, aux Philippines, au Mexique et au Honduras. Cependant, les horribles violences infligées aux femmes peuvent se produire et se produisent n'importe où dans le monde. Par exemple, en Afrique du Sud, en 2020, près de Johannesburg, Fikile Nsangez a été assassinée par 3 hommes armés qui sont entrés chez elle et lui ont tiré dessus. Selon sa fille, elle avait publiquement remis en question les figures dans les murs des maisons causées par les explosions constantes dans la mine et la possibilité que la poussière de charbon pénètre dans les poumons des gens. La violence à laquelle nous sommes confrontés ne nous empêche pas de défier les sociétés multinationales et le gouvernement. À l'heure actuelle, au moment où je vous parle, les femmes africaines s'impliquent dans la contestation des impacts environnementaux et des tentatives d'accaparement des terres du pipeline de pétrole d'Afrique et de l'Est, qui devraient traverser l'Ouganda et la Tanzanie. On estime que le projet émettra 379 millions de tonnes de dioxyde de carbone sur sa durée de vie de 25 ans, soit plus que les émissions nationales du Royaume-Uni en 2022. Le panafricanisme est le seul coup mortel porté à l'impérialisme et au néocolonialisme. Le panafricanisme fait naître une Afrique libre, unie et socialiste. Une Afrique libérée, unie et socialiste donnera le pouvoir de repousser et de rejeter la domination impérialiste. Il créera la capacité d'éradiquer l'oppression de genre et les structures patriarcales, tout en garantissant la pleine participation et l'inclusion de tous les Africains, sans distinction de genre. Plus important encore, le panafricanisme veillera à ce que les ressources de l'Afrique soient utilisées pour répondre aux besoins et aux aspirations de tous les peuples africains et non aux intérêts des entreprises internationales. La plus importante, le panafricanisme est la solution ultime pour mettre fin à la brutalité de la triple oppression des femmes africaines de race, de sexe et de classe sociale. Nous louons les mouvements dirigés par des femmes qui s'opposent aux tactiques répressives des impérialistes. Nous rendons hommage à toutes les femmes qui ont perdu la vie dans ce combat. Leurs contributions ne seront jamais vaines. Par l'organisation et la mobilisation, nous détruirons l'impérialisme et le néocolonialisme. Le recrutement de femmes africaines, de gens marginalisés et de tous les Africains est une priorité absolue pour piller ces forces vicieuses. Nous devons sensibiliser tous les Africains à travers l'éducation politique. Continuons à nous organiser pour sauver notre environnement et nos communautés. Créons des structures qui seront un pont pour maintenir la contribution des femmes africaines dans la lutte, car elles sont et seront toujours les fruits de notre société. Les femmes africaines ont leur place dans la lutte. Les femmes africaines ont été et ont toujours été à l'avant-garde de la lutte. Vive la journée de la femme africaine. Amour, vive nos femmes africaines fortes et résilientes. Je vous remercie.
you.